San Diego teachers refuse to return to the classroom because of COVID. While getting paid not to teach, many decide that they're going to go ahead and teach migrant kids with much less COVID screening instead. Who knew that the greatest vaccine against COVID is anti-white racism? It's Dr. Duke here. He's Dave. This is the Dr. Duke Show. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Dr. Duke Show, the only program that keeps you educated on the craziness impacting K-12 classrooms and college campuses around the world. Katie is off maternalizing, so Dave Fiorazo is joining us. Today, we start in San Diego, which used to be a pretty conservative place, not anymore, where teachers have agreed to educate migrant children in person, despite the fact that 130,000 public school kids still are not allowed to go to school. This is a shocking story. And my teaser there that I gave you at the opening at the top of the show, let me explain that. So you can't go into your typical schools and teach American school kids because you're terrified of COVID. So you're going to go into facilities where you're teaching kids who may not have had any childhood vaccinations at all, who clearly have not been vaccinated for COVID, who were part of great groups of unvaccinated people crossing the border. You're going to go teach them, but you're too afraid to teach your own kids, the own American public school kids, because of COVID. So clearly, anti-white racism is the best vaccine we have for COVID. Because, hey, their unwillingness to teach white kids because they might get sick, and they rush into these facilities, white knighting it with the migrant kids, shows us none of this has anything to do about COVID. It has everything to do about... Hey, let me ask just a question. What if all these refugees who are crossing the border, what if they were all from Denmark? Just a bunch of boring white Danes. Do you think the San Diego teachers would be rushing to get inside these unvaccinated facilities to teach little Danish kids?
No.
I don't think so either.
So let me clarify something. 100,000 students of tax-paying families at San Diego Unified School District are stuck learning in Zoom.
130,000.
130,000?
Yeah.
Wow. So why are the tax-paying students put last? Who's paying for the migrant students to be taught?
The moms and dads. The moms and dads are paying their property taxes, which goes to pay the teachers for teaching their kids, which they're not doing.
Right.
So they're not so they're getting paid not to teach because we haven't stopped the money going to them. Meanwhile, they're using the time that they're blowing off your kids to go teach refugee kids. And it has been suggested, but not confirmed, that they will get paid for teaching the refugee kids on top of what they're making for not teaching your kids.
Why isn't this a scandal?
Is there anything you can do in the public schools that would be a scandal anymore? I mean,
good point.
At some point,
Yeah.
It's so bad that no one expects anything from them, let alone education. I like this tweet. How about this tweet from a Reopen California schools person? It says, wait a minute. So you're saying it's okay for San Diego teachers to teach in person, just not San Diego kids. That's pretty right. That's a good use of your 140 characters.
So here's the argument here. The San Diego County Office of Education is providing the educational program for unaccompanied migrant children they'll be staying at the San Diego Convention Center through July, and all children in California, regardless of immigration status, have a constitutional right to education. They say, we also have a moral obligation to ensure a bright future for these children.
It's constitutionally mandated that we teach refugee kids, and we have a moral obligation to make sure refugee kids get an education.
That's right.
But San Diego kids, piss off, right? Piss off. Somebody give me a better answer than piss off, because that's what they're telling them, right? So I tend to agree with Miss Emily Diaz, who's calling them out. And Diaz, that's one of those Hispaniola names, right? That's not a white person name. And yet she's calling out the white teachers of San Diego.
One of the parents.
Yeah. And with kids in the school. We agree that every child deserves an in-person education. You and I agree, Emily, clearly not the teachers that your schools have hired. But why are tax-paying students put last? If this is a humanitarian issue, then who is rescuing San Diego Unified students? Because our leaders have failed them. It's a great question.
One of the points that I'm really baffled by is the fact that they're not only not teaching their own students in San Diego, citizens of America, but Zoom, if they ever get back to teaching Zoom. But the migrant children, they're not being taught on Zoom, they're being taught in person. Is this right?
By people who are teaching, part of the curriculum is English, learning English, but they're Spanish speaking as well. Yep. The San Diego County Office of Education is providing the educational program for the unaccompanied migrant children who will be staying at the San Diego Convention Center. You said that. All children in California, this is a statement, right? All children in California, regardless of immigration status, have a constitutional right to education. We also have a moral obligation, as you read before. Said that this was said to a Fox News inquiry. So here's the response. The educational program will include English language development and social emotional learning possibilities.
Oh, there it is.
Yeah, there you go.
Yep.
So we'll teach them a little bit of English, and then we're going to give them the squishy stuff. Can I revise my position? Maybe it's better that San Diego teachers who are so full of crap that they're going to teach social emotional welfare to Hispanic kids who don't speak any English. Maybe San Diego kids are actually better off not being taught by these teachers. Is this a big mea culpa on me? Given what you see from your San Diego administrators and your San Diego teachers, maybe, just maybe, Mom, Dad, San Diego taxpayers, maybe you're better off. Maybe you're much better off that those teachers are doing something else. Maybe this is a huge blessing.
Let's go down under for the next one. Oh, where's Trevor Loudon when you need him? What's right, New Zealand? Oh, anyway, young teenage boys at a school in Victoria, Australia, were forced to stand up during an assembly and apologize to girls at the school. Why? Well, on behalf of their gender. 7 News reported that parents of male students at Brower College were outraged to learn about what their children were forced to do. One parent, Danielle Shepard, told the outlet that her 12-year-old son felt confused after he was forced to apologize. Quote, he said that he was made to stand up and basically apologize. It wasn't explained properly to the male students what they were doing or why they were doing it. Boy, does that make sense.
And every boy in the school had to take a turn apologizing to the girls collectively. Look, if this is what you want, I mean, I'm embarrassed for Australia. We've done some pretty emasculated things in this country. I mean, we're let's call it what it is. We're a country of pajama boys. We're Obama jeans wearing pajama boys, sipping our hot cocoa with the little flap in the back of our onesies in case we got to go sit on the toilet and go tinkle. But this is Australia, mate. I mean, your shrimp are being Barbied. I mean, it's Aussie. It's Oz, for God's sake. There are spiders that are bigger than your head. Indigenous people with blow darts still meander through woods, killing people. You've got sharks there, the size of school buses. And Crocodile Dundee is from your country. And so if you're going to behave this way, if this is what's happened to Australia, do this. Instead of getting the boys to apologize, just pass new regulations that every boy will have to sit when he pees. Right? That's the American way. Make the boys sit to pee, number one. Number two, once 1 week out of every 4, give them a little extra syrup of Ipecac. So they throw up and they get cramps. So they know what it's like to be female. Do it. Make them dress in little sporty girl outfits. Make them wear little skirts to school. If this is what you want to do. If what you're all about here is demasculizing children, there are better ways to do it. Okay, mate?
I'm going to play devil's advocate by just quoting the principal of the school. She insisted that respect for women was an important topic for the school without acknowledging any kind of respect for boys as well. Quote, schools play an important role in the promotion of safety and respect for all students, and discussions in schools around respect towards girls and women are a key part of this vital work, Duke.
Respect for all kids, women and girls.
That's right.
Respect for all. We respect everybody, women and girls.
Yep.
It's like a Saturday Night Live skit, right? We respect all people and our kids, women and girls.
So let me get your prediction on this.
Women and girls.
What happens in Australia? Is it going to stay in Australia, or is this going to come over?
Women and girls.
Are we?
You say it enough, it's like subliminal messages. Women and girls.
All students, women and girls.
We do things as stupid here in this country. But again, it's just hard to watch if this was the Swedes doing this, I'd kind of yawn. Hell, this would be a step up in the masculinity factor for the Swedes. If it was the Swedes, if it was the Norwegians who were doing this, I'd kind of yawn. It's what we come to expect. But it's Australia. Oh, what's next you're going to tell me?
Note the symbolic gesture. The boys were told to stand up and apologize for their behaviors of their gender, that they have hurt or offended girls and women.
Stand up to it.
Yep.
And we respect. We respect. Teaching respect is really important for everyone. Girls and women. Girls and women.
Yeah.
Girls and women.
For everyone.
Just girls and women.
Back in America, let's go to LSU, where a panel discussion on the religion of white rage was held, and a professor on the panel said, maybe conservatism, away from being a financial and economic and political policy, is just a euphemism for white supremacy. So, race, religion, and the moment we're in, the religion of white rage, aimed to, quote, shed light on the phenomenon of white rage and map out the uneasy relationship between white anxiety, religious fervor, American identity, and perceived black racial progress, Campus Reform said, citing an LSU statement.
Where is this rage? With every week that goes by, we find out that the so-called insurrection, January 6th at the state capitol, at the Capitol building, wasn't really about rage. It wasn't a bunch of white Rush Limbaugh listeners. You got Black Lives Matter people, you got Antifa people in the crowd. In fact, there was the so-called armed insurrection. Nobody had guns. Nobody had their head beat in with a fire extinguisher. All the stories we got about this white rage turned out to be not true.
But that's what they pointed to. They pointed to the Capitol insurrection was the latest example of what they're talking about here.
Well, but it's not. We now have debunked that, so the truth doesn't matter to these people.
Most people don't know the facts of the story.
People wouldn't even care if they did know. Yeah. The fact is that where is white rage? I mean, we have taken pretty much all the white school kids in public schools, and we've begun to bully and beat them over the head with their whiteness. We have called attention to third and four, and 3 and 4 and 5-year-olds, kids, forcing them to combat their own whiteness. We have in Arizona a project that says by the time white kids are 3 months old, white kids alone, by the time white kids are 3 months old, they are already identifying people based on race. Racism. Where is this white rage you're talking about? We had an election where there were so many questions, so many affidavits filed, so little investigation. Where is the white violence for that? Where did it happen? We have an armed Capitol now because of this insurrection, because it was going to happen again. The forces of white rage we're going to relentlessly keep attacking Washington, D.C. Has anything happened since?
Nope.
No. But is the hostile guard still there? Yes. Have we turned Washington, D.C. into a fortified camp for an imaginary bunch of white rage? Yes, we have. And I would say to this professor, right, that's the whole point. I'll go along with your thesis when you can prove to me that white rage exists. Where? Where is it located?
Well, it's all about Christian nationalism, right? That's why they've got the National Guard there.
Christianity is also white supremacy.
Yep, they've got to be protected at the state capitol. So the book posits that, quote, it is not economics, but religion and race that stand as the primary motivating factors for the rise of white rage and white supremacist sentiment in the United States.
How is that possible when a higher percent of African Americans are Christian than white people? Right?
Well, you just gave me a fact. I don't know what to do with that.
Exactly, logic. The fact that many, many more blacks percentage-wise are actually Christians. You're suggesting that Christianity, white evangelical Christianity, is full of rage, right? Where is your evidence for this?
Yeah.
I mean, this is no small thing. the left gets away with these grand sweeping Can you imagine any serious white person, conservative, trying to make a point by simply demonizing collectively the other race? Well, as we all know, blacks have lower IQs than white. And that's where I'm going to start my conversation with you.
Right.
There will be no conversation, right?
But they can do it.
We all know that black people commit much higher rates, that blacks kill blacks at a much higher rate. End of conversation, right? Major League Baseball would pull out of your All-Star game for saying something like that. So, but yet when it's the left, maybe all of this white rage is tied to the evangelical movement. Maybe we got to get rid of white Christianity because that's just more white supremacy.
But it's this is dangerous, actually.
You get tenure for saying that garbage.
Yep. No, we're having some fun with this, but it's very dangerous because they are framing this whole scenario. Right. They're framing this, and if you repeat a lie enough times, media, then people start believing it. There might be some truth in it.
Listen to this nonsense comment from this complete gibberish that you get from one of the panelists. Panelist and LSU professor Stephen Finley said in a statement, quote, "Religion is a source of connection and community for many Americans. However, it is also the primary motivating factor for the rise of white rage." Where? Where do you see this? And can you imagine saying this about Islam?
Oh, you don't go there.
With its, let's just say, fervent defense of the faith against infidels? Never would you. Now, that's a religion that's got a rage problem. Doesn't it?
Yeah.
Can't talk about that, though, because that's racism. But look at this. Religion is a source of, all right, fair enough. Religion is a source of connection and community for many Americans. However, it is also the primary motivating factor for the rise of white rage. Where is your evidence for that? And white supremacist sentiment. The Capitol insurrection is the latest example.
There we go.
Even if you think the insurrection was a white crime, even if you think the insurrection was actually an insurrection, what did Christianity have to do with it? Exactly. I didn't see anybody holding Vatican flags or Christian crosses. Worst case scenarios. Let's give the left everything we want, about what they want on January 6th. Yep. Despite all the evidence, it was just white people. Despite all the evidence, heavily armed white people. That's all that it was. Followers of Donald Trump. Nobody else was there. Let's pretend all those things are true. But they're not. Let's pretend it. What does that have to do with Christians?
Exactly.
There's no obvious or implicit or even hinted at connection between Christianity and what happened that day. And yet, for the purposes of their rhetoric, notice what the left does. It's called intersectionality. If a white person is present at any evil deed, well, then heterosexuality is to blame, Christianity is to blame, masculinity is to blame, whiteness is to blame. That's all that it takes. Intersectionality means whenever people do bad things and happen to be white, they are guilty of the entire slate of racist insults. And before we move on to Instant Classic Day, I just wanted to take a moment. It wasn't worth reintroducing the story, but I do want to give you an update on one of the stories we've done recently because a lot of our followers were interested in this story. You remember Allison Collins. She's the African-American San Francisco school board woman who actually trashed Asians, right? Which is a big mistake given that 70% of the kids in public schools in San Francisco are Asian. And what did she say? Remember Allison Collins said that Asians play like white people to get ahead. They mimic, they imitate white racist success theories. They become white supremacists to be considered the model minority. That they've turned their backs on their black and brown skinned brothers. They've thrown their lot in with evil white people. All this success in the public schools is because they adopt white supremacist strategies. The kind of thing you and I would have said on that school board, we'd be done.
Wow.
Rather than fire her, as they should, there was a lot of pressure to do so. They demoted her. They took away her committee responsibilities, but she keeps her job.
Yep.
She gets paid what she gets paid, right?
Wow.
And now, this is what gets me. Put the picture back. Our little poor victim here, our little social justice warrior, is suing for $87 million because her free speech was violated. Now, you see the irony of this, right?
Oh, my goodness.
This is a woman who would shut your speech down. This is the same San Francisco school board who would not let a gay white man with a daughter in the schools, would not let a white gay man on the board because he would not be diverse enough. All women on this board.
Oh.
All
okay.
women.
Okay.
And so a gay man who happened to be white, that's free speech. He was not allowed on the board. So Allison Collins, who suffers a slight setback for one of the most racially absurd things I've heard anybody say in the last 10 years, is suing for $87 million in the name of free speech. Boy, that First Amendment by all those racist founding fathers, you're right there to jump on that bandwagon, aren't you, Allison? Suddenly, Thomas Jefferson's not such a bad guy, right? All this week on Instant Classics, we are trying to buck up the sagging, and that's a good word for it, limp, that's another good word for it, masculinity of the American male. We are long past the time when American manhood should be standing up to what's going on in the public schools, standing up to this racism, this targeting of kids because of their gender and race, the radical sexualization they're forcing on little girls. We got to stand up. If white men aren't going to do it, no one's going to do it. Do it. Stand up. We need men with chests, in C.S. Lewis's phrasing. So that's why all this week on Instant Classic, we are doing stand-up dads, right? Time to get chests, gentlemen. Time to stand up. And we're using the example of St. Thomas More from A Man from All Seasons, a historically accurate account of what happened, how Thomas More did not let his principles, did not let his true beliefs become corrupted. He could not be bought, could not be sold. And ultimately, he gave his life rather than go against his conscience. We need more stand-up guys like this. So from the play itself, we got a great quote. Young Richard Rich is a man who, as a young man, kept coming to Thomas More. He wanted Thomas More to employ him when Thomas More was the Chancellor of England. He was ambitious. He wanted sinecures. He wanted jobs that were going to pay a lot of money. He wanted access. So when finally Thomas More said to Richard Rich, I can't employ you. I believe you're better off being a teacher. Go be a teacher, Thomas said. Be a great teacher. I'll help you. I'll help make that way for you. Richard got pouty and became an enemy of Thomas More. He turned out to be the one man who, at Thomas More's trial for his life, actually lied to the court to damn More. It was Richard Rich's testimony, lie, that actually doomed Thomas More. And after, had this great scene in court where Richard Rich gets up there and accuses Thomas More of something he didn't do, denying ultimately that the king had the legal right to divorce his wife. On the way out, Thomas More says, may I ask Mr. Rich a question? And the judge says, we'll allow it. And he says, Richard, come here for a second. What is that chain around your neck? Oh, you're now the governor of Wales. That was the prize that he got for turning in Thomas More. And Thomas More said, for Wales? Why, Richard, it profiteth a man nothing to give his soul for the whole world. But for Wales, Jesus said, what profiteth a man if he gains the whole world but loses his soul? And you didn't even get the world, Richard. All you got was Wales. Really? Was it worth it? All right, if you're a fan of the show, please consider a one-time tax-deductible donation to support our Patriot Club, and we'll send you our signature tumbler. Visit patriotclub.us, that's patriotclub.us. And just a quick reminder, please download our Freedom Project Media app. It's completely free. Simply search Freedom Project in your app stores, and make sure you allow us to notify you. And that's going to do it for the show. For Freedom Project, I'm Dr. Duke, he's Dave. Until next time, stay educated, my friends.